I'll never forget that night. It was a little past midnight when my phone started buzzing on the nightstand. Half asleep, I reached for it, expecting a wrong number or a spam call. But when I saw the name on the screen, Lizzie, my 6-year-old niece, my heart froze. I answered immediately. Her voice was trembling. "Aunt Sarah," she whispered, "I'm hungry, and it's dark. They locked me in the closet." At first, I didn't understand. It didn't make sense. I thought maybe she was having a nightmare. But then I heard the faint sound of her crying, and the metallic click of a door latch. That's when I realized it was real. I tried to stay calm, to keep her talking, asking her where she was. She said she was in Grandma and Grandpa's house, my parents' home, the same house where I grew up, the same house I thought was safe. I told her I'd come get her right away, but she begged me not to tell them she'd called. "They'll be mad," she said. My blood ran cold. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring into the dark, listening to the clock tick. Every sound in the house felt too loud, too sharp. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. I had to see what was going on. Lizzie was my brother Ian's daughter. When he went to rehab 2 years ago, my parents volunteered to take care of her. Everyone called them heroes. They got financial support from the state, care funds, they said, and they seemed proud to have a purpose again. I was proud of them too. Or maybe I just wanted to believe that they were doing the right thing. I sent money every month. Toys for Lizzie, new clothes, groceries. Mum always told me not to worry, that everything was fine, but that phone call wouldn't leave my mind. That morning, I drove straight to their house. It looked the same as always: white fence, trimmed hedges, the flag on the porch. But something felt off. The curtains were drawn, the air was heavy. Mom opened the door wearing her robe. Her eyes were puffy, like she hadn't slept. "Sarah," she said, pretending to smile, "what are you doing here so early?" I told her I came to see Lizzie. "She's at school," Mom said, but it was Saturday. I stepped past her before she could stop me. The house was a mess, dishes piled up, the smell of something sour lingering in the air. I called Lizzie's name. No answer. That's when I saw it, the small closet at the end of the hallway. The one that used to be our coat closet when I was a kid. The door was locked from the outside. My heart started pounding. I turned the handle. Nothing. Then I saw a little blanket sticking out under the door. I kicked it open. Inside, the air was damp and stale. There was a small pillow on the floor, a plastic bowl, and an empty juice box. It was barely big enough for a child to sit in. I felt sick. Mom started shouting from behind me, telling me I had no right to go through her house. I didn't listen. I picked up my phone and called 911. The officers arrived within minutes. When they carried Lizzie out, she looked so small, her hair tangled, her lips cracked from dehydration. She didn't even recognize me at first. She just clung to the female officer's arm and asked, "Can I have some water?" At the hospital, doctors said she was severely malnourished. Her body showed signs of neglect, possibly even psychological abuse. She had bruises on her arms, old ones, faded yellow. When they asked who hurt her, she said softly, "Grandma gets angry when I don't finish my chores." I couldn't breathe. These were my parents, the people who raised me. How could they do this to her? Later, I learned the full story. They had been collecting state funds meant for Lizzie's care, but spent the money on themselves. Vacations, mortgage payments, shopping sprees. Meanwhile, Lizzie slept on a closet floor. When confronted, they denied everything. They said I was exaggerating, that Lizzie was acting out. But the evidence was undeniable. The police took statements, and Child Protective Services opened a case. For weeks, everything was a blur. Hospitals, social workers, endless paperwork. When CPS finally confirmed a neglect, I made a decision. I filed for legal guardianship. Mum cried when she found out. She said I was destroying the family. But I couldn't stay silent anymore. We ended up in court. It was the hardest day of my life. I sat across from my parents, People I once called my safe place, while lawyers talked about abuse, custody, and financial misconduct. Mum wouldn't look at me. Dad just stared at the table. When the judge asked if I had anything to say, I stood up. My voice was shaking, but I said, "Your Honor, I'm not trying to punish my parents. I'm trying to protect my niece. Someone has to." The courtroom was silent. You could feel the tension, the disbelief. Then, after what felt like forever, the judge said the words I'd been praying for: guardianship granted to Sarah Miller. I looked over at Lizzie sitting next to the social worker. For the first time in months, she smiled. Just a small smile, but it was enough. After that, things changed quickly. The financial check stopped going to my parents. They lost the house they bought with Lizzie's funds. Within months, they packed up and moved out of state. They never apologized. Lizzie started therapy. At first, she was afraid of everything: the dark, loud noises, even hugs. She flinched whenever someone raised their voice. But little by little, she began to heal. We found a small apartment together. I turned the spare room into her own bedroom: pink walls, fairy lights, and a glow-in-the-dark star ceiling. Every night, we'd count the stars before bed. It became our little ritual. Sometimes, she'd whisper, "I'm safe now." Before I continue, make sure you've liked and subscribed to the channel. And I'd tell her, "Yes, sweetheart, you're safe." The first time she laughed out loud, really laughed, I cried. It sounded like hope. Life became normal again, in its own quiet way. Lizzie went to school, made friends, learned to play piano. She grew stronger, more confident, more herself. Then one day, something unexpected happened. My brother Ian, Lizzie's father, showed up at my door. He looked different, healthier, clear eyes, steady voice. He told me he'd been sober for over a year. He had a job, a small apartment, and he wanted to be part of Lizzie's life again. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to protect her, to keep her safe from any more disappointment. But another part of me knew that healing isn't just about safety. It's about forgiveness too. So we started slowly: supervised visits, short phone calls. Then, one sunny afternoon, Lizzie asked if she could see her dad at the diner down the street, the same one where we used to eat Sunday breakfasts as a family. I watched from the window as they sat together. At first it was awkward, but then she reached across the table and took his hand. He started crying. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger, I felt peace. When she came home that evening, she looked lighter. He said Daddy told me he's sorry. I told him I'm not scared anymore. I hugged her so tight. Because that's all I ever wanted, for her to feel safe, to know she was loved. Now, years later, she's a teenager with big dreams. She wants to be a social worker, to help kids like her. Sometimes I still think about that night, the midnight call that changed everything. How one terrified whisper saved a life. People always say family is blood, but they're wrong. Family isn't about who you're born to, it's about who show